Hello, my name is Carol Mae Whittick. Welcome to Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening Woman. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. Who is the awakening woman? She's a woman who's seeking a greater possibility in her reality and looking for solutions. She knows being awakened is not a lofty ideal, but a necessity. If she can transform herself, she can change the world. Her conversations will introduce you to talented women who will speak to your spirituality, your sensuality, and your soul. They share their stories and explain how they're in service to the world. So let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. Well, this episode is me coming back into the Her Conversations stream. It's been many months since I last published an episode, and the break was a lot longer than I even imagined I would need to take a break. I knew that I needed to take some time. There are many things that were happening in my life that needed direct attention and focus, and I was not aware of how deeply that would affect me and how much it would change me and how much I would learn. And in taking time away from producing the podcast, and it gave me a greater appreciation of who I am and what I had been doing, the workload that I was under, and under no duress to do it at all. I enjoyed the rate that I was working at, but I didn't actually acknowledge the level that I was working at. Many people have podcasts out there. The majority of them are self-produced or produce one or two people, but when you really look at what it takes, you could quite easily delegate this out to a team as well, and many people do and have that luxury to do so. And going forward, that should be something that I'm aiming for in order to take some of the work away from myself in terms of the production work that can be outsourced, so that I can move on to the next episode of Her. So what I want this episode to be is just a reintroduction of myself, and also a catch-up on the lessons that I've learned as well. There's so much that has happened, and I've made a few notes, so if you hear a little bit of rustling, there's just some paper here as well, because I just wanted to guide myself through the thoughts that I've been having as I've been putting everything into, just sitting down and reflecting on what's happened and what that means for me and what I've learned, more importantly. And the way that I've structured it is in those three aspects: the spirituality, the sensuality, and the soul. And just to begin with spirituality, you may notice, if you've listened to the podcast in the past, that there's just a slight difference now. One of the things that I've just removed the vocals from the theme. And initially it was Satanama, which was taken from mantra that was used when I was using Kundalini yoga as a big part of my spiritual practice daily, almost. And I felt I started to move away from the practice without realizing that I was moving away from the practice, because I just got absorbed in other things, and the way that I structured my day meant that I wasn't making time for it. I was just in a different space. And then when I felt that I really needed to get a practice together, that I really wanted something to come and help me and guide me through what I felt I was going through at the time, the first thing that I always used to use was the mantra, and at this point it wasn't working for me. Who knows why? Um, and what was happening in my personal life was having to really look at certain relationships that were not healthy. And as a result of then taking the stand to actually move away and kind of figure out how I was going to be on my own. And these were not romantic relationships, these were friendships and family relationships. But I was going through a major, major amount of grieving, more than I could have ever imagined. And it also brought up some unresolved grief that I probably hadn't dealt with from previous years, with the passing of my mother in 2016. So all this was happening at the same time, and I would turn on mantra and it just didn't feel like it was speaking to me or hearing me. I did mention to someone that I felt taunted by it, which seems like a very bizarre word to use, but at one point that's how I felt. I'm like, this kind of light, airy music, and that's not where I am. I'm not in a light, airy place. If anything, I felt very separated from myself, and I'm still trying to find a way to communicate what that actually meant. But the best way that I can put it right now is that I felt separated from myself, and I was very much in a state of survival. Just like, okay, we need to get up. We need to eat. We need to, it got down to that. So when your mind is on that complete level of just like one foot in front of the other, one breath at a time, anything other than that, i.e. producing a podcast, is completely out of the question. So when you're in this really state of, who is this person? I don't recognize who I am at this time. Everything feels very bizarre. And then using what I felt was a tool, or I understood to be a tool, to help me through it and it not work, it felt as effective as, they say, if someone is in a depressed state, which I believe that I was, and you go to them and say, oh, get over it. That's how it felt. And I was not interested in any kind of bypassing at that time. I didn't want to sit and wallow in it, but I needed to be heard and understood. And what got me through that was gospel music, real, and especially the voices of female gospel singers singing from a place of understanding pain, singing from a place of reaching out and asking for deliverance, if anything, and also reaching out in faith that it's just a moment, even though it feels like there is no escape from what is happening at that point. And I went back to that, and it's not that I and what I'm trying to say is that I realized that I needed to actually acknowledge where I was at the time. And through this understanding of what I needed and how I needed to actually acknowledge the pain and what the pain was teaching me, when I started to move past that point, I didn't. When I started to try and reincorporate Kundalini practice, I was doing so, but I wasn't completely in it at all. I was doing so because it's like, I remember this is what I used to do, so maybe I should do this. And then what's happened over the past month has been, and I suppose these are the times that we live in, revelations of horrific emotional and sexual abuse within the community. And there's been a book written, there's been many accounts that previously have been shut down. And the response of teachers that I held in high esteem has been really surprising to me, because I felt that this was an opportunity to respond to this matter in the way that I believed we were working towards. Believe women, move forward, break down patriarchal standards, and go into a new wave of raising and supporting women from wherever they come from, and it didn't present itself to me that way. I didn't see that response, and as a result, I personally was not able to compartmentalize the teachings from the lineage of the teacher and just still carry on with it and kind of pretend that everything was okay, and to an extent not believe the words of a woman who had come forward many years after her experience to share her experiences. It just, I just couldn't be part of it, and I had to walk away. So I don't know if it's because there's a level of spiritual intelligence and ways of kind of, being slick and cognizant of one thing and kind of being able to put one thing here and there and just work through it. I don't have that in my mind. All that I can go through is the way that I've felt in my body about certain things. And I'm being very vague at the moment, but it's not just one part. It's not just one person's recounting. There have been spaces opened up for people to actually come forward and share their views. And initially I thought maybe this is just going to be like a kind of bash fest, how things can be on social media. And it has been anything but that. It's been men, women, children who have finally, after sometimes decades of suppressing, of being ostracized, of being shamed, felt strong enough to come forward and say, this happened to me too. This is the Me Too movement on a scale that I've never been in part of an organisation where it's just come to the point where it's just overwhelming. And these are the roots of what I was involved in is linked to, and I just need to be separate from it. And in saying so, I understand that no organisation, whether it's a religious, spiritual organisation, whether it's the film industry or corporate, the corporate working industry, retail, acting, whatever, wherever people are, there is going to be some level of misuse and abuse. Unfortunately, no one is above that. And what this whole experience has given me has actually reminded me that my spiritual practice doesn't need to come via anybody else. The gatekeepers don't need to be there. I don't need a gatekeeper to God. This has actually opened up my direct relationship to God, universe, creator. I feel happy and secure in calling it him, her, God. It deserves a name, and God is a good one for me. It also means that, I've learned so many things from all of the practices and all of the modalities that I've explored over the years. And I'm able to then use each of those parts that have felt good to me and create something for myself. And also in doing the podcast and meeting so many different women who come from so many different corners of healing and spirituality and wellness, and just creating a good life for yourself, that just because I'm not doing one thing doesn't mean I'm going to go to hell, which is, the way that most religions, organizations / cults will make you feel that if you don't continue down our way of thinking, then oh dear, but I have to remember there are so many successful people out there in the world, some that probably don't even pray at all, and they've got their own answers. There are billions of people on the face of the planet all doing something that gets them through the day, different levels of success, and they'll understand. So I know there's more out there. There's basically just, it's about being my own personal guru. It's about fostering my own direct relationship with God. That's what I've learned about spirituality. And if you're going through anything at the moment right now, don't think that you need to sage it away or crystal it away, or let it be what it is. Enjoy. Maybe that's not a word that you would resonate with if you're going through something right now, but allow yourself to feel every inch of it, and cry and scream and shout and throw and stay in bed and have showers and overeat and do whatever it is needs to be in that time. Because in order for us to recognize the highs, there has to be lows. They're relative terms. May not like it, but I believe that's how things are. Moving to sensuality, and just touching briefly on this. Sensuality to me is always about the physical experience. So, like I said, in relationships, I was very much aware that I had a codependency in all of these relationships. And I'm going to be speaking to a woman and releasing her interview later on in this series, who really is an expert in the narcissistic personality disorder and what that means for somebody who gets entangled in that relationship. What I can see now is how I was in a codependent situation in relationships, that just whatever was in my stars for the past 6 months about releasing and clearing stuff out, it was, I can see where I had codependent relationships and they just blew up and they had to end, or things would not be able to move forward for me. And it was really also understanding what self-love means to me. And self-love, one of the things I've written down for self-love here is, one, I need to, in order to have a real relationship, when you have a good relationship with somebody, like a friendship or a working relationship, is it gets to the point where when you have a good relationship with somebody, it gets to the point where they know you so well that you don't need words. You know, they know you on such a different level, and such an intuitive level that it becomes, you know, that you can completely relax around that person. You're not hiding. And I was hiding from myself, because in order to maintain certain relationships, I had to hide myself. I had to hide various aspects of my ambition, my knowledge, my experience, my humor even, and become a diminished version. And when I actually took time away from, like I said, the podcast and all that I was doing and all that I have done and achieved, in writing, in music, in travel, I realized a lot of the time I couldn't have conversations with people about any of those things. The people that I was entertaining that are no longer entertained. I mean, what kind of relationship is that? You know? So it was just switching back to self-love, and self-love was like, this is who I am and this is what I can do and this is what I'm capable of doing. Self-love to me means setting up boundaries now as well. Anywhere that I feel that I'm not being heard in the way that I'm communicating, and if I'm not being allowed to explain where I feel that maybe there might be a breakdown in communication, that's not going to be able to, I can't have that. Any kind of abusive connections, and sometimes they can be very slight. You'll say one thing, you won't be acknowledged, or there'll be just a sneering comment with regards to it. There'll be ignoring the things that are important to you or slandering the things that are important to you. That's not going to happen anymore. And also, discipline is really important for me as well. Going back to the physical, when things went darker for me, I started to really have an unhealthy relationship with food. So I started to be very, very cognizant about how I was going to change that, and that started at December, actually. Even before Christmas, it was like, you can get away with certain things when you're young, eating badly, but as you get older, then your body is not going to keep allowing you to abuse it. And if I have ambitions for myself or just want to live a good life, I need my health. And my discipline was learning about the way that the body works, learning about the systems within the body. There's so many. Learning about nutrition, treating myself every day, not waiting for it to be anything other than a day that's got a Y with it. You know, you deserve the best, you deserve to eat the best today. So I'm learning more about that as well. Other areas where I'm building up are listening to what people say to me and actually hearing things. And in particular, another area that I'm going to be bringing more women in to speak to about this, because they teach me as well when I speak to them and when I interview them, is understanding the love relationship and hearing what gets told to me in the first instance, because people always tell you who they are. Noticing the red flags and actually acknowledging that I notice them, because I realize in situations where I've been, I can't handle this anymore, I knew almost at the beginning that things weren't right. And even recently, I've come across where I've been like, someone is saying something to me and it doesn't sound good. It doesn't feel good. The words may be trying to convey that they care or kind of invite me into a more intimate situation, but it feels aggressive. And when you've just come out of a situation where you're unpicking microaggressions, you start to be very, very sensitive to how they can very easily slide past you, or you can assume that this time it will be different, or you will be the person to kind of heal and save that person and make things all right for you, and it's not going to be that. It doesn't happen. So those are my kind of main sensuality points that I'm going to touch on as well, and I just want to keep this a brief reintroduction to her conversations, and the final piece is soul, and what soul represents in higher energetic resonance is always about what you give back to the world. When I started to really entertain the idea of getting back into the podcast and what I wanted it to be, and I sat down and really drew up a plan of how it was going to be, I realized what a gift it was to have taken that time out, because you can't go through any experience and not learn from it. Whether you choose to apply the lessons, is secondary, but I realized that what I wanted to do is turn all of my lessons, all of the experiences of trauma into just a way of providing value and providing tools. And this is what her conversations is about. This is what her is about. It's tools for the awakening woman. So not every conversation that I have with every woman will be something that resonates with you or something that you want to delve in deeper, but it will be just an interesting insight into another woman's life, and it might inspire you to find what is right for you. So I'm coming back stronger, wiser, weather beaten, but all the better for it, Not inviting anything into my space without reason, but, I'm more open to feeling into things now, whereas before I might have just tried to get through it as quickly as possible. If something is happening, I'm going to really appreciate what it's trying to teach me and learn from every icky step and dark corner and shadow that it throws up. Pain is there for a reason. Our experiences are there for a reason, and I can say that I've learnt so much. I've come out of that a different person. Whether it's done, who knows, but I'm able to come back and know that I want to create some real value on the planet. And I'm glad that I live in a time and space that allows me to do it in a way like this, through technology, through reaching out directly to you. So welcome back to Her Conversations. Thank you for hearing me, and I hope that my notes and my kind of free-form thoughts make sense. I'd like to thank all the women that have been part of the first series, I can call it, of Her Conversations, and I look forward to many more going forward, and the expansion of her and me as well. If you'd like to follow me on social media, you can on Instagram, and I'm Kazmic, that's Cazmick. On Facebook, you can find me under Carol Mae Whittick, and on my website, so CarolMaeWhittick.com, carolmaewhittick.com. Thank you for listening, and normal programming resumes next week. Thank you.